Welcome everyone to TradeStation and another installment of our Meet the TradeStation Team podcast series. This podcast series is designed to take you inside the heart and soul of TradeStation, to meet the people that are working every day to make your experience with TradeStation the best that it can be. TradeStation is an award-winning broker offering trading in stocks, stock options, and futures, all within one trading platform with low commissions. But you also get the outstanding TradeStation analysis platform with advanced charting, real-time scanning, and powerful option analytics. Our mobile app lets you take your trading on the road. To learn more, I invite you to visit our website at tradestation.com.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Meet the TradeStation Team. I'm your host Michael Burke. I'm Vice President of Client Training here at TradeStation. And today we're very privileged to be joined by TradeStation Technologies' Eugenio Perez, Director of Data Science and Quantitative Analysis. Now Eugenio has just started working at TradeStation this year and is currently working on the next generation of analysis tools for TradeStation customers. Eugenio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. My pleasure. I'm happy to be part of the team.
So Eugenio, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at TradeStation.
Sure. I studied economics and East Asian studies at Harvard. And when I graduated in 1989, I started working for Sumitomo Life, managing equities. In New York, then the Japan office, and then back in New York. And in the mid-90s, I started doing work in quantitative approaches to managing money. And then I was made the company's first risk manager. Eventually, I moved on to Ernst & Young, where I did a little consulting for risk, then Deutsche, where I did equity risk control. I learned a lot about derivatives, got my CFA, and got my FRM. Then I went to work at Enron. I learned a lot about commodities, wrote it all the way down, and afterward I got a job at Florida Power and Light, where I was doing structuring, valuing, and transacting exotic derivatives, until my boss moved over to the utility side, and he pulled me over to start a quant group for him. And then I worked for a hedge fund in Boca that wanted to start a commodity trading business, and I introduced him to an artificial intelligence system that I had developed to manage my own money. And now, 2 years later, I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
So you speak fluent Japanese and write fluent Japanese. How did that happen?
Well, I don't know about fluent, but at Sumitomo Life in New York and in Japan, the whole company just spoke Japanese, and so even when we used to trade, we used to call up brokers, and the brokers would be speaking to us in Japanese.
That's got to come in handy here now that our parent company is based in Japan.
Sure. Actually, I've had a great time meeting everybody, and as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, we had the management meeting, and one of the gentlemen, Mandai-san, actually does kendo, and we did kendo together, and we had a nice, fun time.
That's got to be great, and that'll create a lot of opportunities for you to be a translator, I'm sure.
Sure.
So, Eugenio, you're the Director of Data Science and Quantitative Analysis. Not everyone really understands that term, quantitative analysis. Can you give us a definition of that?
Sure. Well, data science and quantitative analysis is part of product strategy and innovation. And the idea really here is to be the tip of the spear and to try out and approach new technologies, new trends, new ways of doing things. And in particular, I guess specifically what quantitative analysis is really three things. One is a certain experience in the market, broadly speaking. The second is the application of statistical analyses to make sure that effects are real rather than, say, like a placebo, something that just happens to appear to be true but isn't really. And the third is to apply the power of computers to do the heavy lifting in these kind of analysis, and in particular other more exotic things like artificial intelligence.
So I know a lot of what you're working on is still top secret, but maybe you can discuss at a high level how your work will benefit customers in the future.
Sure. Up to now, the kind of software and the kind of analysis that we have made available to customers have been primarily the technical stuff. In other words, based on prices and volumes and that kind of thing. And this, of course, can be very useful. Money can be made like that. That's how trend followers work, and there are plenty of people who make money like that. But additionally, there are other approaches that we haven't touched that at the very least are diversifiers, but can be, especially when put together, can be much more powerful. So, for example, things like looking at macroeconomic stuff to see whether that drives the direction of prices, or looking at fundamental analyses, or different types of arbitrages, and other things like that.
Well, one thing's for sure, there's a lot of great technology and a lot of new tools that are going to be available to customers here in the very near future.
That's our goal.
You mentioned that you just touched on it a second ago. One of the cool things about you is that you're a third-degree black belt in Kendo. Can you explain a little bit about what kendo is and how you got started?
Sure. When I went to Japan, I decided that I might as well do a traditional Japanese art, and I couldn't decide between kendo or judo. I ended up actually making it judo, and I did judo from the time I was 25 to the time I was 38, when eventually my whole body had fallen apart. And I had to quit that, and I was very sad for a little while, but then I found kendo, and I came back to it, and I've been doing kendo now for 13 years. And it's Japanese swordsmanship. So if people have ever seen samurai films or even Star Wars, then they're familiar with that type of fighting.
Well, again, I want to thank our guest, Eugenio Perez, for spending this time with us today. This was awesome, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh, my pleasure.
So thanks, everyone, for listening, and be sure to tune into more of our TradeStation podcast. And don't forget to visit our website at tradestation.com to learn more about our outstanding educational resources and online brokerage services. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
The preceding podcast was for educational purposes only. All of the symbols and trading ideas discussed by the instructors and guests were for educational purposes and not recommendations. Active trading is not suitable for everyone. Options trading carries a high degree of risk. You can find the characteristics and risks of standardized options disclosure and additional disclosures on the TradeStation website.